Mary Beth Collins stood at the dirty window of her jail cell, watching the sun set over the small town of Cedar Ridge. The orange light made the dusty streets look almost pretty. She knew this would be the last sunset she would ever see. In just a few hours, when the sun came up again, she would be dead. The young woman pressed her face against the cold metal bars. Her auburn hair hung loose around her shoulders, and her green eyes were red from crying. Years old, but tonight she felt like an old woman. Tomorrow morning, the people of this town would watch her hang for a murder she did not commit. Mary Beth had arrived in Cedar Ridge just 3 days ago. She had been traveling for weeks, looking for work and a place to call home. Her horse had gone lame about 5 miles outside of town, so she had walked the rest of the way, carrying her small bag of belongings. She had hoped to find work as a seamstress or maybe in one of the town's restaurants. She was good with her hands and could cook well enough to earn her keep. But everything had gone wrong from the moment she stepped foot in this place. On her first night in town, she had rented a small room above the general store. The room was tiny and the bed was hard, but it was clean and cheap. She had planned to start looking for work the next morning. Instead, she had been woken up by loud shouting and the sound of horses running fast through the streets. Someone had killed Henry Morrison, the richest man in town. Morrison owned the biggest ranch for miles around and had more cattle than anyone else in the territory. He was also the kind of man who had many enemies. He was known for being cruel to his workers and for taking land that did not belong to him. But he was also powerful. His death had shaken the whole town. The trouble started when Sheriff Jake Porter found Mary Beth walking along the road that led to Morrison's ranch. She had been trying to get to the next town over, where she had heard there might be work. But she had gotten lost in the darkness and ended up on the wrong path. When the sheriff stopped her, she was carrying Morrison's gold watch. Mary Beth remembered finding the watch on the ground near some rocks. It had been lying there in the dirt, gleaming in the moonlight. She had picked it up, thinking someone had dropped it. She had planned to turn it in to the sheriff when she got to town. But when Sheriff Porter searched her bag, he also found a roll of money covered in blood. She tried to explain that she had found these things, that she was not a thief or a killer, but nobody believed her. Why would they believe a stranger with no family and no friends in town? She had no way to prove where she had been or what she had been doing. She had no one to speak for her. The trial had been quick. Judge Cornelius Wade was a stern man who did not like to waste time. The evidence seemed clear to him. Mary Beth had been found with the dead man's belongings. She could not explain how she had gotten them, except to say she had found them. Her story sounded like a lie to everyone in the courtroom. The people of Cedar Ridge wanted someone to pay for Morrison's death. Even though many of them had not liked the man, his murder had frightened them. If someone could kill Henry Morrison, who was rich and powerful, then no one was safe. They wanted justice, and they wanted it fast. Peter Morrison, Henry's son, stood up in the courtroom and pointed his finger at Mary Beth. His face was red with anger as he demanded that she pay for killing his father. Peter was a young man, maybe 25 years old, with his father's mean eyes and quick temper. He did not care if Mary Beth was guilty or innocent. He just wanted someone to hang for his father's death. Judge Wade had listened to all the evidence, which did not take long. There were no witnesses to speak for Mary Beth. No one had seen her anywhere except near the ranch with the stolen goods. The judge had banged his wooden hammer on the desk and declared her guilty of murder and robbery. The sentence was death by hanging. Now Mary Beth sat in her cell, listening to the sounds of the town preparing for her execution. She could hear the men building the gallows in the town square. The hammering echoed through the night, each nail driven into the wood like a nail in her coffin. She could hear people talking and laughing as they walked past the jail. Some of them were already planning to come watch her die in the morning. Sheriff Porter had brought her a last meal, but she could not eat it. Her stomach was too tight with fear. The food sat on the small table in her cell, getting cold. The sheriff was not a cruel man, but he believed she was guilty. He had told her she could write a letter if she wanted, but she had no one to write to. She was completely alone in the world. Mary Beth thought about her life and how she had ended. Up in this terrible place, she had been an orphan since she was very young. She had grown up in a home for children with no parents in Kansas. When she turned 18, she had left to make her own way in the world. She had worked in different towns, doing whatever jobs she could find. She had always been honest and hardworking. She had never stolen anything or hurt anyone, but none of that mattered now. Tomorrow morning, she would die for something she had not done. Outside her window, she could see people gathering in the streets. Word had spread quickly about the hanging, and folks from neighboring towns were coming to watch. Some had brought their families as if this were a celebration instead of a person's death. Children ran around playing games while their parents talked about the crime and the punishment. Mary Beth closed her eyes and tried to pray, but the words would not come. She had prayed every night since her arrest, begging God to help her, to send someone who would believe her story. But no help had come. No miracle had saved her. She lay down on the hard bed and pulled the thin blanket over herself. In just a few hours, the sun would rise, and her life would end. She tried to think of happy memories, but even those seemed far away now. All she could think about was the rope that would soon be around her neck, the faces of the people who would watch her die. The hammering in the town square finally stopped. The gallows were finished. Everything was ready for her execution. Mary Beth Collins closed her eyes and waited for dawn. The sun was just beginning to peek over the mountains when Mary Beth heard the key turn in her cell door. Sheriff Porter stood there with two other men, their faces serious and grim. It was time. Her legs felt weak as she stood up, but she forced herself to walk with her head held high. She would not give the people of Cedar Ridge the satisfaction of seeing her break down. Outside the jail, a large crowd had already gathered in the town square. Men, women, and even children filled the dusty street, all eager to watch the hanging. Some had brought chairs and blankets, as if they were coming to see a play at the theater. Others stood in groups, talking and pointing at Mary Beth as she walked toward the wooden gallows. The gallows stood in the center of the square like a terrible monument. The wood was new and yellow, and the rope hung down from the crossbeam like a snake waiting to strike. Mary Beth tried not to look at it, but her eyes kept going back to that rope. In just a few minutes, it would be around her neck. Judge Wade stood near the gallows, holding a piece of paper with her death sentence written on it. He was dressed in his best black suit, and his white hair was combed back neatly. Beside him stood Peter Morrison, Henry's son, watching Mary Beth with cold, angry eyes. He wanted to see her die, and he was not going to miss a moment of it, Sheriff. Porter helped Mary Beth up the wooden steps to the platform. Each step felt like it took forever, but at the same time, she wanted them to never end. The executioner was waiting for her at the top. He was a big man with rough hands and a black hood over his face. He did not look at her as he tied her hands. Behind her back with thick rope, the crowd grew quiet as Judge Wade unfolded his paper and began to read. His voice carried across the square in the still morning air. Mary Beth Collins, you have been found guilty of the murder of Henry Morrison and theft of his property. The court sentences you to hang by the neck until dead. May God have mercy on your soul. Mary Beth looked out over the crowd one last time. She saw faces full of excitement and curiosity, but no kindness or mercy. These people did not care if she was innocent, just wanted to see someone pay for Morrison's death. She closed her eyes and tried to think of something peaceful like the sunset she had watched from her cell window the night before. The executioner placed the rough rope around her neck. It was heavier than she had expected, and it scratched against her skin. She could smell the new hemp and feel the knot pressing against the side of her head. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. Any last words? Judge Wade asked. Mary Beth opened her eyes and looked at the crowd. I am innocent, she said, her voice clear and strong. I did not kill Henry Morrison. I pray that someday the truth will come out, and the real killer will be caught. Some people in the crowd laughed and called her a liar. Others just stared at her with blank faces. Peter Morrison shouted, Hang her now! She killed my father. Gah! Judge Wade nodded to the executioner, who moved toward the lever that would open the trapdoor under Mary Beth's feet. She closed her eyes again and tried to think of her childhood, of the few happy memories she had from the orphanage. She thought of Sister Margaret, who had been kind to her when she was small. Just as the executioner was about to pull the lever, a loud voice called out from the edge of the crowd. "Stop! Stop right there!" Everyone turned to see where the voice was coming from. At the edge of the square, a man on horseback was pushing through the crowd. His horse was big and black, covered with dust from a long ride. The man himself was tall and lean, with dark hair and sun-weathered skin. He wore a long brown coat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes. Sheriff Porter recognized him immediately. His face went white. "Sam Krieg," he whispered. The name went through the crowd like wildfire. Sam Krieg. Everyone in the territory had heard of Sam Krieg. He had been one of the most feared outlaws in the Southwest. A member of the notorious Blackwater Gang. For years his name had been on wanted posters in every town from Texas to California. Banks and trains had been robbed by his gang, and many men had died trying to catch them. But Sam Krieg had disappeared 5 years ago. Some said he was dead, killed in a shootout with the law. Others thought he had fled to Mexico or maybe even further away. Nobody expected to see him riding into Cedar Ridge on the morning of a hanging. Sam rode his horse right up to the gallows, his hands held high to show he was not reaching for his guns. The crowd backed away from him, afraid but fascinated. Even the men with rifles seemed unsure of what to do. This was Sam Krieg, the famous outlaw, but he was not acting like a man who had come to cause trouble. "I said stop," Sam called out again, his voice calm but commanding. "That woman you are about to hang is my wife." The crowd gasped and began talking all at once. Mary Beth opened her eyes and stared down at the man on the horse. Seen him before in her life, she was sure of it. He was a stranger to her, but he was claiming to be her husband. Judge Wade stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Sam Krieg, you are under arrest. Surrender yourself immediately." Sam ignored the judge and looked directly at Mary Beth. His eyes were dark brown, and she could see something in them that looked like pain and hope mixed together. "Mary Beth," he said softly, "it is you. I have been looking for you for 7 years. "I do not know you," Mary Beth said, confusion and fear making her voice shake. "My name is Mary Beth Collins. Have never been married." Sam dismounted from his horse and took a step closer to the gallows. Several men in the crowd raised their rifles, but he paid no attention to them. "Your name is Mary Beth Krieg," he said. "You are my wife. We were married 7 years ago in New Mexico, in a little church outside of Santa Fe." Sheriff Porter found his voice. "This is nonsense. The woman's name is Collins, not Krieg. You are just trying to save her life with lies." Sam reached into his coat pocket, moving slowly so no one would think he was going for a weapon. He pulled out a small silver locket on a thin chain. "This belongs to her," he said, holding it up so everyone could see. "Inside is a picture of our wedding day." He opened the locket, and even from where she stood on the gallows, Mary Beth could see there was indeed a small photograph inside. Sam held it up toward her. "Look at it," he said. "Look at the picture and tell me you do not remember." Mary Beth stared at the locket, trying to see the photograph clearly. There was something familiar about it, something that made her heart beat even faster than it already was. But she could not remember ever seeing it before. "This proves nothing," Judge Wade said. "Anyone could have a locket with a picture in it." Sam looked up at Mary Beth, and his voice became gentle. "You have a small scar on your left shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. You got it when you fell from a horse when you were 12 years old. You also have a birthmark on your right hip that looks like a butterfly." The crowd fell silent. These were things that only a husband would know about his wife. Mary Beth felt her face grow hot. How could this stranger know such personal things about her body? "I do not remember you," she whispered. "I do not remember being married. I do not remember anything you are talking about." Sam's face filled with sadness, but he did not look away from her. "I know," he said quietly. "Something happened to you, something that made you forget." "But you are my wife, Mary Beth Krieg, and I have come to take you home." The crowd in the town square was silent as everyone stared at Sam Krieg. Nobody knew what to do or say. This was the famous outlaw they had all heard stories about, but he was not acting like a dangerous criminal. He was standing there calmly, asking them to believe that the woman about to hang was his wife. Judge Wade was the first to speak. His face was red with anger and confusion. "This is impossible," he said. "Sam Creek, you are wanted for robbery and murder across 3 states. Even if what you say is true, it does not change the fact that this woman killed Henry Morrison." Sam looked up at Mary Beth, who was still standing on the gallows with the rope around her neck. She looked scared and confused, but she was listening to every word. "Judge," Sam said, his voice respectful but firm, "my wife would never kill anyone. She's the gentlest person I have ever known. If she is accused of murder, then someone has made a terrible mistake." Peter Morrison pushed forward through the crowd. His face was twisted with rage. "This is a trick," he shouted. "He is lying to save her life. Hang them both." Some people in the crowd agreed with Peter and began shouting for Mary Beth's execution to continue. But others were curious about Sam's claim. They wanted to hear more of his story before they decided what to believe. Sheriff Porter stepped closer. To Sam, his hand on his gun. "Even if she is your wife, that does not make her innocent of murder. The evidence against her is clear. She was found with your father's belongings. Morrison's belongings, I mean." Sam shook his head. "Someone put those things on her. Someone who wanted to see her blamed for a crime she did not do." He looked around at all the faces staring at him. "I know my wife. She could not hurt a fly, let alone kill a man." Judge Wade studied the locket that Sam was still holding. "You say that locket belongs to her? How do we know you did not steal it from someone else?" Sam opened the locket again and held it up higher so more people could see the photograph inside. "Look at the picture," he said. "Look at the woman in the photograph, and then look at Mary Beth. Tell me they are not the same person." Dr. Franklin Hayes pushed through the crowd. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, and he was the only doctor in Cedar Ridge. "Let me see that locket," he said. Sam handed it to him carefully. Dr. Hayes looked at the photograph through his small glasses, then looked up at Mary Beth on the gallows. He studied her face for a long moment, comparing it to the picture. "Resemblance is very strong," Dr. Hayes said slowly. "But a photograph can be hard to judge. There would need to be other proof." Sam nodded. "I can prove she is my wife. I know things about her that only a husband would know. I've already told you about her scars and birthmarks, but there is more." He looked up at Mary Beth again. "You broke your left wrist when you were 16. It did not heal properly, so it still hurts when the weather is cold. You also have a small chip in your front tooth from when you fell off a fence when you were 10 years old." Mary Beth touched her tongue to her front tooth without thinking. There was indeed a small chip there, just as Sam had described. She did not remember how she had gotten it, but it had always been there. Dr. Hayes looked interested. "These things could be checked," he said. "If you will allow me to examine the woman, I can see if what you say is true." Judge Wade thought about this for a moment. The crowd was getting restless, and he could see that some people were starting to believe Sam's story. "Very well," he said finally. "But first, Sam Creek, you will surrender your weapons and submit to arrest. You are a wanted man, and there is a price on your head." Sam unbuckled his gun belt and let it fall to the ground. He also pulled a knife from his boot and dropped it beside the guns. "I surrender myself willingly," he said. But I ask that you do not hang my wife until you have proven whether or not I am telling the truth. She is not your wife." "Fighter," Peter Morrison screamed. "This is all lies. She killed my father, and she should hang for it." Judge Wade held up his hand for silence. "We'll investigate this claim properly. Take the rope off the woman and bring her down from the gallows. Dr. Hayes, you will examine her and report what you find. Sheriff Porter, arrest Sam Creek, but treat him with respect until we know more." The executioner removed the rope from Mary Beth's neck, and she nearly collapsed with relief. Her legs were shaking so badly that Sheriff Porter had to help her down the steps. She looked at Sam as she passed him, trying to see something in his face that she might remember. But he was still a complete stranger to her. "I do not understand," she said to him. "If what you say is true, why can I not remember you? I not remember being married?" Sam's eyes were full of sadness. "Something happened to you 7 years ago. You disappeared during a raid on our homestead. I searched for you for months, but I could never find you. I thought you were dead." "What kind of raid?" Dr. Hayes asked. He was listening carefully, too. "Everything," Sam said. "Comanches," Sam replied. They attacked our farm one night while I was away. When I came home, the house was burned and you were gone. I found signs that you had been taken, but the trail went cold after a few miles. I never stopped looking for you." Mary Beth shook her head. "I do not remember any of this. I remember growing up in an orphanage in Kansas. I remember being alone. All my life, I have never been married." Sam looked at her with infinite patience. "Head injuries can cause people to lose their memories," he said gently. "Maybe something happened to you that made you forget your past life." Dr. Hayes nodded. "This is true. I have seen cases where people lose all memory of their previous lives after a severe blow to the head." He looked at Mary Beth. "Young lady, would you allow me to examine you? I need to check if the scars and marks this man described are really there." Mary Beth felt embarrassed, but she knew this might be her only chance to prove her innocence. "Yes," she said quietly. "If it will help find the truth." Judge Wade looked around at the crowd. Many people were disappointed that the hanging had been stopped, but others seemed interested in this strange story. "We will continue this investigation in my office," he announced. "The rest of you go home. There will be no hanging today." As the crowd began to break up, Sam was led away in handcuffs by Sheriff Porter. But before he went, he turned back to Mary Beth one more time. "I know you do not remember me," he said, "but I have never stopped loving you. I will prove that you are innocent, even if it costs me my life." Mary Beth watched him go, feeling more confused than ever. Could this strange man really be her husband? Could she have lived an entire life that she could not remember? And if Sam Creek was telling the truth, then who had really killed Henry Morrison, and why were they trying to blame her for it? As Dr. Hayes led her toward his office for the examination, Mary Beth felt a tiny spark of hope for the first time since her arrest. Maybe, just maybe, she would not die today after all. Dr. Hayes closed the door to his office and asked Mary Beth to sit on the examination table. His office was small but clean, with shelves full of medicine bottles and medical books. Sunlight came through the window, making the room feel warm and safe. Mary Beth was nervous, but she trusted the kind old doctor more than anyone else in this town. "Do not worry," Dr. Hayes said gently. "I will be very respectful. I just need to check if the marks that Sam Creek described are really on your body." "Mary?" Beth nodded and allowed the doctor to examine her. Dr. Hayes looked at her left shoulder and found the crescent-shaped scar that Sam had mentioned. He also found the butterfly-shaped birthmark on her right hip. Everything was exactly as Sam had described. But Dr. Hayes found something else too. On the back of Mary Beth's head, hidden by her thick hair, was a long scar. It was old, but it told a story of serious injury. "You have had a very bad head wound," Dr. Hayes told her, as he helped her fix her clothes. "This scar shows that someone hit you very hard, or you fell and struck your head on something. An injury like this could easily cause you to lose your memory." Mary Beth touched the back of her head. She had always known the scar was there, but she had never thought much about it. "How long ago did this happen?" she asked. Dr. Hayes studied the scar carefully. "I would say about 6 or 7 years ago. The scar's completely healed, but it was a very serious wound."
"Ow!"
"You are lucky to be alive." 6 or 7 years. That was exactly when Sam said she had disappeared. Mary Beth felt her heart beating faster. Could Sam's story really be true? Dr. Hayes walked to his desk and wrote down what he had found. "Every mark and scar that Sam Creek described is exactly where he said it would be. Either he is your husband, or he knows you very well in some other way." "But I do not remember him at all," Mary Beth said. "I do not remember being married or living on a farm or any of the things he talked about." "Memory loss from head injuries can be complete," Dr. Hayes explained. "Sometimes people remember nothing of their life before the injury. They have to start over, like being born again as an adult." While Dr. Hayes was examining Mary Beth, Sheriff Porter was having his own conversation with Sam Creek in the jail. Sam sat calmly in the cell that Mary Beth had been in just hours before. He did not seem worried about being arrested. "You've been missing for 5 years," Sheriff Porter said. "Where have you been?" Sam looked out the small window. "I have been living on a small ranch in New Mexico, trying to forget my past." After Mary Beth disappeared, I went a little crazy. I joined the Blackwater gang and did things I am not proud of. But eventually I realized that living as an outlaw was not going to bring her back. So you just quit being an outlaw? Porter asked. He found this hard to believe. I saved up enough money to buy a small piece of land, Sam said. I built a cabin and started raising a few cattle. I had been living quietly, bothering no one. I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone. Then why did you come here? How did you know Mary Beth was in trouble? Sam smiled sadly. I heard about the hanging from a traveling merchant. He described the woman who was going to be executed, and something about his description made me think of Mary Beth. I knew it was probably not her, but I had to come and see for myself. Sheriff Porter studied Sam's face. The man seemed to be telling the truth, but it was a very strange story. If she is really your wife, why does she not remember you? I think someone hurt her badly after the Comanches took her, Sam said. Maybe they hit her head and left her for dead. When she woke up, she could not remember anything, so she had to make up a new life for herself. Dr. Hayes came to the jail an hour later with his report. He told Sheriff Porter and Judge Wade everything he had found. The evidence was clear. Every detail that Sam had given about Mary Beth's body was correct. There is no way he could know these things unless he was very close to her, Dr. Hayes said. I believe he is telling the truth about being her husband. Judge Wade looked troubled. But even if she is his wife, that does not prove she is innocent of murder. She was still found with Henry Morrison's belongings. Judge Sam said from his cell, I know my wife. Hush. She would never steal from anyone, and she would never hurt anyone. If she had those things, someone else put them on her. Sheriff Porter had been thinking about this too. I have been wondering about that myself. It was very convenient that we found her with the stolen goods so close to the scene of the crime. Almost too convenient. What do you mean? Judge Wade asked. Well, if Mary Beth really killed Morrison, why would she keep his watch and money? Why not throw them away or hide them? And why would she be walking on the road where anyone could see her? It does not make sense. Dr. Hayes nodded. I agree. A person smart enough to kill Morrison and escape would be smart enough to get rid of the evidence. Judge Wade was beginning to have doubts too, but Peter Morrison was still demanding justice for his father's death. The young man had been waiting outside the jail, and now he stormed in. I do not care if she is married to the devil himself, Peter shouted. She killed my father, and she should hang for it. Peter, Judge Wade said calmly, we must be sure we have the right person. If Mary Beth is innocent, then the real killer is still free. She is not innocent, Peter insisted. She had his watch and his money. What more proof do you need? But even as Peter spoke, Sheriff Porter was remembering things that bothered him about the case. The blood on the money had been fresh, but Morrison had been dead for hours when they found Mary Beth, and the watch had been clean, with no blood on it at all. How could she have taken it from a bloody crime scene without getting any blood on it? Sheriff Porter decided to ride out to Morrison's ranch and look at the crime scene again. Maybe he had missed something the first time. At the ranch, he found Morrison's foreman, a man named Carl Bishop. Carl had been the one to discover Morrison's body, and he had been very helpful during the investigation. But today, Carl seemed nervous and jumpy. Sheriff, Carl said, I heard you arrested someone for the murder. Is the case closed? Not yet, Sheriff Porter said. I want to look around the house one more time. Carl's face went pale. Why? You already found everything you need. Sheriff Porter studied Carl's reaction. The man was acting very strange. Carl, is there something you want to tell me? Carl looked around nervously, as if he was afraid someone might be listening. Sheriff, can we talk somewhere private? They walked away from the house toward the barn. Carl kept looking over his shoulder as if he expected someone to follow them. Sheriff Carl said in a low voice, I think you might have arrested the wrong person. Sheriff Porter felt his heart skip a beat. What do you mean? I saw someone else near the house that night, someone who had reason to want Morrison dead. Who? Sheriff Porter asked. Carl took a deep breath. Jake Turner. He and Morrison had been fighting about money. Morrison accused Jake of stealing cattle. From him, Jake was very angry, and he said he would make Morrison pay. Why did you not tell me this before?" Carl looked ashamed. "Jake threatened me. Said if I told anyone what I saw, he would kill me too. But now that you have arrested that innocent woman, I cannot keep quiet anymore." Sheriff Porter felt excitement and worry at the same time. If Carl was telling the truth, then Mary Beth really was innocent. But it also meant that the real killer was still free, and he might try to hurt Carl for talking. "Where is Jake Turner now?" Sheriff Porter asked. "I do not know," Carl said. "He left town right after the murder. But Sheriff, there is something else. I think Jake planted those things on the woman to make her look guilty." Sheriff Porter rode back to town as fast as his horse could carry him. He had to tell Judge Wade what he had learned. Mary Beth might be innocent after all, and if she was, they'd almost hanged the wrong person. As he reached the town, Sheriff Porter saw smoke rising from the direction of Jake Turner's old cabin. On the edge of town, someone was burning something, and Sheriff Porter had a feeling he knew who it was and what they were trying to destroy. Sheriff Porter rode hard toward the smoke rising from Jake Turner's cabin. His horse's hooves pounded on the dusty ground as he tried to reach the cabin. Before whoever was there could destroy all the evidence, the smoke was getting thicker, which meant the fire was big and had been burning for a while. When he got to the cabin, Sheriff Porter saw two men standing outside watching the small building burn. One was Jake Turner, a thin man with dark hair and mean eyes. The other was someone Sheriff Porter had not expected to see: Carl Bishop, the same man who had just told him about Jake's guilt. Jake and Carl saw the sheriff coming and tried to run, but it was too late. Sheriff Porter had his gun drawn and was shouting for them to stop. Jake reached for his own gun, but Carl grabbed his arm. "Do not make this worse," Carl said to Jake. "It is over." Jake's shoulders dropped in defeat. He knew he had been caught. The two men stood still as Sheriff Porter got off his horse and walked toward them with his gun ready. "Jake Turner," Sheriff Porter said, "you are under arrest for the murder of Henry Morrison." Jake laughed bitterly. "Cannot prove anything. Whatever was in that cabin is burned now." But Sheriff Porter was smarter than Jake thought. While the cabin burned, the sheriff looked around the area and found something very important. Behind the cabin, partially buried under some rocks, was a bloody shirt and a pair of boots with blood on them. Jake had tried to hide the evidence, but he had not done a good job. "Is this your shirt, Jake?" Sheriff Porter asked, holding up the bloody clothing. Jake's face went white. He knew he was trapped. Carl looked at his friend with sadness and fear. "Carl," Sheriff Porter said, "why did you help him? And why did you tell me the truth today?" Carl hung his head in shame. Jake said it would be easy. Morrison was a bad man who hurt a lot of people. Jake said no one would miss him. But when I saw that innocent woman about to hang for something I could not stay quiet anymore. Sheriff Porter handcuffed both men and put them on their horses. As they rode back to town, Carl told the whole story. Jake Turner had been stealing cattle from Morrison for months. When Morrison found out, he threatened to have Jake arrested and sent to prison. Jake became angry and decided to kill Morrison. To keep him quiet, on the night of the murder, Jake and Carl had gone to Morrison's ranch. They had planned to just scare him, but the fight got out of hand. Jake hit Morrison with a heavy candlestick and killed him. Then they took his money and his watch to make it look like a robbery. When they saw Mary Beth walking on the road later that night, Jake got the idea to plant the evidence on her. He thought it would be perfect. A stranger with no friends or family to defend her. No one would question her guilt, and Jake would be safe. "I told him it was wrong," Carl said as they rode. "Jake said it was better for one person to die than for both of us to hang. I was scared, so I went along with it, but I could not watch that woman die for something she did not do." When they reached Cedar Ridge, a crowd quickly gathered. News traveled fast in small towns, and everyone wanted to know what was happening. Sheriff Porter took Jake and Carl straight to the jail, where Judge Wade was waiting. In the jail, Mary Beth and Sam were sitting together, talking quietly. Mary Beth still could not remember Sam, but she was beginning to trust him. There was something about his kind eyes and gentle voice that made her feel safe. When Sheriff Porter brought in Jake and Carl, Mary Beth looked at them closely. She did not recognize Jake, but something about Carl's face seemed familiar. I remember you, she said to Carl. You were at Morrison's ranch when the sheriff brought me there. You looked at me strangely. Carl nodded sadly. I knew you were innocent. I felt terrible about what we had done to you. Judge Wade questioned both men carefully. Carl told the truth about everything, and eventually Jake confessed too. Was angry and bitter, but he knew there was no point in lying anymore. The evidence against him was too strong. Morrison deserved to die, Jake said. He was a thief and a cheat. He stole land from poor farmers and treated his workers like slaves. That may be true, Judge Wade said, but you had no right to kill him, and you certainly had no right to let an innocent woman hang for your crime. With Jake's confession, Mary Beth was officially cleared of all charges. The people of Cedar Ridge felt ashamed that they had been so eager to see her die. Some of them came to the jail to apologize to her, but she was kind and forgave them. The question now was what to do about Sam Creek. He was still a wanted outlaw with a price on his head. But Judge Wade was a fair man, and he could see that. Sam had changed from the criminal he used to be. Sam Krieg, Judge Wade said, you have committed many crimes in the past, but you also saved an innocent woman's life today. You could have stayed hidden on your ranch in New Mexico, but you risked your freedom to help your wife. Sam stood up straight and looked the judge in the eye. I am ready to pay for my past crimes, Your Honor. I just want to know that Mary Beth is safe. Judge Wade thought for a long time. The whole town was watching to see what he would decide. Finally, he spoke. Sam Creek, I sentence you to 5 years of service to the communities you once robbed. You will help rebuild what you destroyed. You will work with the law to catch other outlaws. And you will prove that you have truly changed your ways. It was a fair sentence, and Sam accepted it gratefully. It meant he would not go to prison, but he would have to work hard to make up for his past mistakes. Mary Beth was free to go, but she had nowhere to go. She had no memory of her past life, and she owned nothing except the clothes on her back. Sam offered to take her to his ranch in New Mexico, even though she could not remember him. I do not want to force you to come with me, Sam said gently. I know I am a stranger to you, but you are my wife, and I love you. We'll take care of you and be patient while you decide what you want to do. Mary Beth looked into Sam's eyes and saw only kindness and love. Even though she could not remember their past together, she felt drawn to him. There was something about him that felt right, like coming home after a long journey. I would like to try, she said softly. Maybe. Being in the place where we live together will help me remember. And even if I never remember, maybe we can build new memories together. Sam's face lit up with joy. He had never stopped hoping that someday he would find Mary Beth again. And now, she was giving him a chance to win her heart all over again. 3 months later, Mary Beth and Sam had a second wedding ceremony in Cedar Ridge. She still could not remember their first wedding, but she had fallen in love with Sam again. He was patient and kind, and he never pressured her to remember things she could not recall. Dr. Hay said her memory might never come back completely, but it did not matter. Mary Beth had learned that love was not just about remembering the past, it was about choosing to build a future together. Jake Turner was hanged for Morrison's murder. Carl Bishop was sent to prison for helping him. The people of Cedar Ridge learned an important lesson about judging others too quickly and the danger of wanting revenge more than justice. Sam kept his promise too. Judge Wade, he worked with sheriffs across the territory to catch other outlaws and help them find a better path. He became known as a man who had turned his life around, and many other criminals followed his example. Mary Beth opened a small shop in Cedar Ridge, where she sold dresses and other clothing she made. She was happy with her new life, even though she sometimes wondered about the memories she had lost. Sam told her stories about their past, and slowly, she began to feel connected to the woman she used to be. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch of their ranch house and watch the sunset together. Mary Beth would lean against Sam's shoulder and feel grateful for the second chance they had been given. She had been seconds away from death, but love had saved her life and given her a new beginning. Sometimes the best stories were not about remembering the past, but about having the courage to start over and build something beautiful from the pieces that remained.